Mayor and City Council. I am happy and proud to report and to provide to you the recommended budget in accordance with Texas statute and the City of Sugar Land Charter. The proposed budget for fiscal year beginning October 1, 2017. The budget for fiscal year 18 complies with City Council adopted financial management policy statements and begins incorporating proposed changes to financial strategies that build resilience for uncertain times and ensures that the city's financial stability is maintained into the future. The budget maintains existing service levels and implements City Council priorities. The budget continues to maintain outstanding city services for residents and visitors, ensures continued financial strength by meeting all fund balance requirements, and is structurally balanced. It's been nearly 25 years ago that city leaders proposed and voters approved an innovative and opportunistic financial strategy. At the time, with a 50-cent property tax rate compared to the 31-cent that we have today. Back in 1993, voters authorized local option sales taxes, 1/2 cent to reduce property tax and 1/2 cent for economic development. There were actually two elections, one in 93 and one in 95, and there were elements of those two types of local option sales tax on the ballot in 93 and in 95. And so the net result was an increase in the local sales tax rate from 1% to 2%, with a 1/2 cent going for property tax reduction and a 1/2 cent going to economic development through the 4A and 4B corporation. The property tax reduction vote substituted sales tax to pay for city services. The property tax rate was required to be lowered, and it was reduced by 9.2 cents over that period of time through 2017 based on that sales tax income that we received. The economic development sales tax funded the SLDC and 4B corporations that have driven expanded job opportunities, quality of life improvements such as parks and amenities like the Houston Museum of Natural Science and Constellation Field. The decisions that were made back in the 90s allowed Sugar Land to become a regional employment center by providing a revenue stream to promote economic development and corporate relocations to the city, and to become a regional marketplace with the development of First Colony Mall and Town Square, for example. Revenue from this growth and new business activity occurring in our city led to additional property tax reductions of an additional 9 cents for a total of over 18 cents, 9 of which was required by the law. The other 9 cents was because of the economic development that occurred in our city because of the 4A and 4B corporations. In addition to that 9 cents, we also have been able to offer increased exemptions to homeowners, including a 10% homestead exemption, an additional $70,000 exemption for over 65 and disabled residents. The additional revenue also helped to enhance city services, providing for things like sidewalk repairs that were not part of the city's service delivery back in the early 90s, and beautification of right-of-way throughout the city, which was not a city service at the time. Some of the other results that have benefited residents by the strategy that has been in place now for a quarter of a century is the visitors that come to Sugar Land, that shop, that work, that go to their professional services here in the city, help to pay for the cost of services within the city. So our visitors help to subsidize the service cost. We've been able to provide very high-level services that receive a high rating of satisfaction by our residents through our citizen satisfaction surveys. Over the last 6 years, we've been able to maintain a AAA bond rating for the first time in the city's history. which helps us when we do borrow money to be able to borrow it at the lowest possible rate of interest. And also the declining tax rate environment that we were in allowed us to be able to issue certificates of obligation for capital projects instead of going to the voters for voter authorization and a necessary tax increase whenever we wanted to do a capital improvement. So that's been another benefit that the residents have received. The chart shows the impact that the sales tax for property tax reduction and economic development has had on the city. You can see the vertical axis on the left is the revenue annually, which the election was in 93 and 95, and you can see the revenues beginning to come in for both of those local option sales taxes going through fiscal year 18. And the two lines are illustrating the property tax rate, with the green line indicating the required property tax rate and correlates to the vertical axis on the right. And the red line indicates what the city was able to actually lower the property tax rate to. So we have lowered it as much because of growth in economic development as we did, literally from the revenue from the sales tax for property tax reduction. I'd also highlight the decline in sales tax revenue that you'll notice, and we'll be talking more about this later, moving from year 16 to year 17, 2016, 2017, and that we're projecting to continue into 18. And you'll notice that that little green line, the required property tax reduction, that is indicating that since revenues fell, we're authorized to be able to raise the tax rate to make up for that. And based on earlier discussions with the City Council in the spring, it is not our intent to raise the tax rate, and there is not a recommendation to raise the tax rate, even though the revenues from the sales tax for property tax reduction are falling. However, we are recommending, as we have discussed in the past, shifting of 1 cent from the portion of the tax rate that goes to maintenance, and, from debt to maintenance and operations. As the growth in sales tax has helped us be able to lower the property tax rate from 50 cents to 31 cents today, we believe that's a pretty good success story. But there is another part of this that I think is important to illustrate, and that is the tax rate itself. As I mentioned a moment ago, the tax rate is made up of two pieces. The debt service rate and the M&O rate, or the operating rate. And you'll notice that in the 2001-2002 time period, we actually got the M&O rate all the way down to 9.3 cents. It was at this time when we were receiving double-digit sales tax growth, and we could afford that type of property tax rate to fund operations. Obviously, the situation has evolved since then, and we're not seeing that type of growth in sales tax any longer, but the cost of doing service continues to increase. We recognized at that time that we did have to be careful about the reliance on sales tax because of the volatile nature of it as a revenue stream. And the City Council adopted our financial management policy statements beginning in 2002, setting a cap on what we wanted to see the limit on funding from sales tax for operations expenses. And it had gotten to a high during that early part of 2001-2002 up to 55%, and as of 2016 we've been able to get it to, I believe you said 46? 46% in 2017. So we've been making progress while at the same time holding the line on the property tax rate, which I think is a very important point to make. Also regarding property tax, the TML, Texas Municipal League, does an annual survey. This year, 30 cities responded, and of the cities in a population category of 65 to 165, the city of Sugar Land is 18th in population. It has the third highest net taxable value, or tax base, the wealth of the community. That then results in a high value per capita of $143,000 compared to an average of $76,000, and by far the lowest tax rate among the survey group, with the average of cities being in the 56-cent range, and we're down to 31 cents. There is one other city that did not respond to the survey, Tyler, that does have a lower property tax rate than we have, but they're also very reliant upon sales tax like we are. These sales taxes primarily paid by both residents, non-residents, and corporations help buy down our tax bills for both residential and commercial properties. That is the upside. The downside is it leaves us more susceptible to economic change and less resilient when change is occurring. As we discussed in the spring, we are seeing a period of significant change. It is a weakness in our financial planning that we're not anticipating changing either in the short or the long term. I think we need to be prepared over the long term to see soft sales tax, and that is for a variety of reasons, and I've identified some of them here. Less spending at the traditional brick and mortar retail, more online sales with limited sales tax collection. There's an article that you'll be receiving later this week in your FYI information indicating the challenges associated with assessing a sales tax against internet sales. But the more internet sales become predominant, the harder it is going to be to collect sales tax. We're also seeing a reduction in sales tax as oil prices fell, and the businesses that are in our city that provide services in the oil and gas business, we're seeing sales tax reductions in those areas as well. And the demographics of the city are leading towards smaller household sizes and less spending, all of which is causing us to recognize that rather than concentrating on what worked in the 90s and 10, 20, 25 years ago, we need to be preparing ourselves for what we need to be addressing for the next 25 years. In addition, we're experiencing regular attacks on local control from lawmakers in Austin. Everything from revenue caps to the cap on chickens, which is, again, one of my favorites. You'll recall that local control nowadays includes the legislature adopting or considering rules to say that every household in Sugar Land could have 6 chickens. Now, we got to be careful. It's 6, no more than 6. So we're going to have a cap on our revenues and a cap on the number of chickens. As the city is aging, our infrastructure is aging and requiring greater expenditure both on rehabilitation and reconstruction. And I'm making a distinction there because you'll hear us refer to the rehabilitation expenses that we're transferring to the general fund and the operating budget. Those really should fall more into the category of maintenance and operating expenses because they have a limited ability to extend the life of the asset, a limited ability to justify issuing long-term debt for those. And so we're trying to shift those expenditures back into the general fund where there is a wider array of revenue streams helping to cover it rather than just sales tax which has been our practice in recent years. And we're getting some pushback from the community relative to impacts of growth that we also need to be mindful of, because the growth that occurs needs to be complementary to the quality of life that we want to achieve. All of that needs to be taken into consideration as we're looking toward the future. This chart is illustrative of our projected revenues from sales tax over the 5-year period, beginning with last year's projection from fiscal year 17 to fiscal year 2021. And the first blue line there is the 2017 estimate. That was the estimate that we were looking at and anticipating when the budget was adopted last year and the financial plan was approved as part of that. The red line indicates the estimate that we've put together based on current circumstances. And you will see that over the 5-year period, we're looking at a difference of roughly $15 million over that time period. That is a significant impact to our resources, our revenues, and something that has to be taken into consideration moving forward. So in other words, a downturn in 1 year can affect the trend line moving forward, and that's what we're anticipating to occur. So we have a new strategy that we have been working on for the last few years that is intended to reduce our reliance on sales tax and help us become more resilient to economic changes. This includes reducing our reliance on sales tax for services, including infrastructure rehabilitation, and expanded use of sales tax for one-time capital expenditures. In other words, accumulating anything above a very conservative estimate and then using that to pay cash for capital projects that would otherwise require the issuance of debt. We're currently working with the City Council Finance Committee to propose policy direction that would be incorporated into the financial management policy statements. Our recommendation has been and will be to take a conservative approach for sales tax forecasting. The budgeted revenue for next year is estimated at the actual for 2017, or our projected actual for 2017. We maintain that same level of sales tax collections all the way through the end of next fiscal year and only allow projected growth to be included beginning in fiscal year 19. That way, if there are any changes that need to be made, we would be able to manage over a longer period of time to deal with those rather than having to have policies in place that, for example, stop sidewalk repairs, which is the type of situation that we've been experiencing recently. Additionally, we've transitioned the rehabilitation funding from sales tax to property tax and other more stable revenues within the general fund so that they can be built into the operating budgets for the departments. The longer-term major reconstruction work will continue to be included in the capital improvement program, and we will implement our asset management program to make sure that we're making wise reinvestment decisions for both current and future residents. Other elements in the strategy include infrastructure asset management. The new strategy incorporates increased accountability. Through our operational assessments, we've identified improvements to efficiencies such as the way we do minutes, and we've been able to reassign some resources that have been devoted in the past to preparation of minutes to some very significant needs within the records management area. Another example of efficiencies that have come out of our departmental assessments are the fire department staffing and deployment models that have been now confirmed and supported by the assessment conducted by a third party. Yesterday, we launched the Goal Measures dashboard on the city website, providing for increased accountability and transparency to the public on 30 key operations tied to the City Council's midterm priorities. This will assist management and elected officials in making data-driven decision-making on key priority areas. At the same time, we've implemented departmental performance measures where I'm holding departmental directors accountable for operational performance that may not rise to the level of council priorities, but are still important to ensure acceptable service delivery and accountability. And it's just part of just getting better as an organization, which we constantly strive for. We're using citizen engagement to help guide our decision-making, whether it be in the use of voter-authorized debt for capital projects like the Parks Bonds project that we instituted a little while back. As we look forward, we need to build resiliency into our finances through continued economic development programs, smart public-private partnerships, and development of land that produces high taxable values and further promote Sugar Land as a destination city. Additionally, we need to encourage smart redevelopment of our aging retail centers to continue to support our economic health. This is a long-term objective, and we won't get there overnight, but we need to continue to promote these ideas. Now so the next steps will be to update the financial management policy statements, adopt future land use plan and begin implementation. There's some very specific recommendations regarding redevelopment and the use of activity centers for more intense economic development activities, adopt our corporate communications plan, and achieve priority projects that have been on the drawing board with funding for opportunities as needed, including the Imperial Market, second Hotel Conference Center project, the Telfair Track 5 Commercial Tours 4, development of the Central Prison Unit property into a business park, and seeing the Fleur and Schlumberger projects come to fruition. All of those are in the works at different points of their development right now, and we hope to see them moving forward in the coming year.